As you've either heard or noticed by now, I moved my shop a couple months ago. I used to be in my 2-car garage, and now I'm in a portion of my friend's warehouse space. Actually, here's a scale drawing. It's a good-sized space, but the bulk of it's used for inventory, shipping, office space, bathrooms, and other stuff. And in fact, if you compare it to the garage, you can see that the difference isn't as huge as it might initially sound. Well, let me take that back. The difference isn't as big yet. And that's because there's a lot of organizing and consolidation that we still need to do. We should be able to open up this space quite a bit, and that's going to make a big impact. Anyhow, I guess all of that is to say that today's video is going to focus on a project that should really help me in organizing things. Now, I've already got a lot of small storage between this workbench and this, also workbench. So really what I need is a place to store some of the larger items and some of the things that I rarely reach for. Big glue bottles, bandsaw blades, dust bags, all that kind of stuff. Let's get to work. Okay, so I know that I just said that I moved my shop out of the garage, but here I'm back in the garage. Basically, anytime that I'm working on a project that involves a bunch of full sheets of plywood, I like to start off in my garage where I break them down, that way I can more easily carry them into the workshop, which is in the back of the warehouse. So my initial idea was to set up my table saw and a couple of sawhorses to tackle this. And about 1/5 of the way through the first cut, I thought, you know what, this is dangerous. So let's just wait until the morning and use the circular saw. With my pieces cut down to a more manageable size and in the shop, I started refining my pieces by cutting them down to what will be their finished dimensions. And to do this, I used my table saw with a feather board, and for a few of the pieces that were just too long, my track saw. And I know just seeing me cut a bunch of panels doesn't really help to explain a whole lot about what's going on, so let's take a look at my cut sheet. If you want the specific dimensions, you can pause this screen and write them down. Otherwise, in total, you're going to need 5 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood, 1 sheet of 1/2 inch, and 2 sheets of 1/4 inch. From 2 of the sheets, we'll get the tops and bottoms and all 4 of the side pieces for the 2 vertical cabinets. From another sheet, we'll get the 2 doors. Yet another sheet will give us the 4 pieces needed for the low center cabinet, and we can get a center partition from one of the other sheets. And then finally, we'll use the last sheet for the back panel that we'll eventually mount our wall control panels to. And you should have plenty of material left over to build this 3-inch platform that the whole thing can sit on. And the 1/4 inch material is going to be used for sliding doors and the back panels for all the cabinets, and then the 1/2 inch sheet will be used for adjustable shelves in all the cabinets. Alright, so with all of our pieces cut out, I had a few things I needed to do before we could start assembling anything. First was cutting in a rabbet to accept the back panels in all the cabinet exterior pieces. After that, I cut 2 grooves into the top, bottom, and 2 side pieces for the low center cabinet, and those are going to accept the sliding doors. And this is actually something that I get asked about fairly often, and I think this shot shows how it works really well. So basically you want to cut the groove in the top a lot deeper than the groove in the bottom. Normally it's kind of hard to show this on camera, but because the sides are going to get covered by the tall cabinets, I went ahead and cut them the full length of the board, so you can see them here on the outside. And in this shot, you can see how having that deeper groove in the top lets the door lift up high enough to clear the bottom panels and get into the groove. Next, I wanted to clear out some material from the back edge of the inside of both of the tall vertical cabinets to create a ledge where the big back wall will sit. I know that sounds kind of confusing, so let's look at a drawing so you see what I'm talking about. So basically, I wanted this back panel to be flush with the back of the rest of the unit. So I could have cut it to the exact size of the span and then used pocket holes to screw it into the cabinets, but I wanted a physical resting place for it to sit that will carry the load. So I'm going to create this little ledge in the back and then make the panel 1.5 inches longer than the span and then screw it into the back of the vertical pieces. And I think that's going to be a stronger long-term solution. After I'd pre-drilled all of my pocket holes, the last thing that I needed to do before assembling was to make a bunch of shelf pin holes for my adjustable shelving. So assembling this thing went really quick, and I think that pocket holes are kind of a no-brainer for projects like this because they just make it really easy. Like, I don't know, building a website with Squarespace. No, but seriously. I've been using Squarespace for almost 2 years now, and I've recommended it to a ton of people, both here and in my personal life, and I haven't heard one person complain yet. And I think the reason for that is because it's just drop dead simple and the outcomes look awesome. They have a variety of templates that are perfect for any kind of website that you might be dreaming up, be it a personal portfolio, an online store, or something for a brick and mortar like a restaurant. And should you ever need assistance, they have really good customer service, which I can personally vouch for. So whatever you're looking to do, they'll be there to help you do it. And best of all, right now you can start a free trial by visiting squarespace.com/4eyes and save 10% off your first purchase when you use the offer code 4eyes at checkout. So if you're thinking about starting a website, or even if you have an existing one, you owe it to yourself to at least give them a look. All right, thanks Squarespace. Next, I cut out my back panels from some of the 1/4-inch material and installed those with a couple of screws. And this is all pretty straightforward. You can see in this shot, I'm using a clamp to suck my sides in while I install the panel. And something that I should have done, and will next time, is when you have a cabinet this large, make at least one of your shelves fixed. I ended up doing this later, but having that helps to keep the long panels from bowing in or out, and makes things like installing doors a lot easier. Speaking of which, next we're going to do the doors. So back when I cut these out, I made sure to leave them about 1 inch longer than they needed to be in each direction. Here I guess I'm just double checking that. And I'm also lifting the cabinet up slightly off the ground with a piece of scrap 1/4-inch plywood. Over at the drill press, I made 3 mortises for my hinges. And I got this super sweet slow motion shot, and when I was watching it back, I noticed this piece. let's watch that again. So this guy doesn't know where he wants to go. He obviously came from here, shot out this way, bounced off the post, came back, made it past the vacuum ever so slightly before flipping a B and getting sucked up. Heck of a journey for a wood chip. Once the hinges were attached to the door, I marked the locations that I installed them, clamped the door to the cabinet, then transferred my marks so that I could install the part of the hinge that goes on the cabinet. Then I used my router and a flush trim bit to make the door flush with the outsides of the cabinet. And I probably should have done this a little bit earlier, but next I used my Forstner bit to make a little door pool. Oh well, good excuse for more slow motion. So I've had at least 2 people tell me that these look like coffins, so I figured that I'd test them out. Next, I could build the platform that the whole thing's gonna sit on top of. And as you can see in the drawing, this actually needs to be longer than 8 feet, the length of the plywood. So I decided to build it in 2 halves. So basically I just ripped out a bunch of 3-inch wide pieces, cut them to length, and then attached it all with pocket screws. The half that I'm working on here is identical to what the other half's going to be, and actually in the next shot, you'll be able to see me putting the 2 halves together. Alright, things are really starting to come together now. Literally. Next I set my 3 cabinets on the platform and attached them to one another. That way I'd know the exact size that I should make the back panel so that I could cut that to size and then attach it. Now, because adding a fixed shelf to the tall vertical cabinets was a late game audible, I ended up putting it too high where it interfered with the back panel, so I used my multi-tool to cut out a little notch. And this thing's come in super handy for me on at least a few occasions now. So once my back panel was on, I could attach my wall control panels. And I posted about this on Instagram, but I'm really digging these flat gray panels. I also have some of the reflective ones where you see my woodpecker tools hanging on the plywood storage box. And they're great, but I don't know. There's just something about the flat gray panels that makes me wish that I'd gone with that color for the first set too. Next I cut and inserted a bunch of adjustable shelves, and it turned out that I wanted more, so I used my leftover scrap and even more 1/4 inch scrap to make a few more shelves. So I think this thing's gonna come in really handy. Like I said, it's got a ton of storage for large to medium sized things, which is really where the shop's been lacking. It's also got a nice wall to hang and display things. And it has this nice flat surface, which is really important because as anybody with any experience can tell you, when you're mid-project, flat surfaces get eaten up. You're always looking for somewhere to set apart or to set that tool that you know you're gonna need again in 15 minutes. And the first place people tend to set things is on their workbench or even the table saw, where they just get in the way constantly. So this hopefully will stop me from that behavior. All right, good talk. Thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing, thanks for hitting the notification bell. But most of all, thanks for just watching. Because without that, really none of those other things matter. All right, see you in the next one.